Hello, good afternoon, Alan. How are you?
Very well, Lilu. How are you?
Good. Alan is the author of The Six Archetypes of Love. This is part three of our interview. And I would like to learn from you because I found it fascinating how you're referring to a lot of movies in the book and and the whole evolution of love and where we're coming from and what's actually missing in our culture. So if you can tell us about that.
Oh, be happy to. Yes, love in our culture is rather debased, you might say. You think of the top grossing TV shows of recent time, and you'd have to include Sex and the City and Desperate Housewives. And, Sex and the City is about sex in the city.
Yeah.
But it's also not about love because they find a lot of sex, but they don't find a lot of love. And similarly, Desperate Housewives, well, I'm afraid they're desperate for a reason. And actually, the plot turns on the fact that they don't find love, although they keep trying to steal each other's lovers and score social points off each other in that way. So, what we have in our culture, it seems to me, is best selling shows that encourage us to see love in a very limited way. I consider, these are people who are orphans. They are just trying to get a good-looking person for their self-esteem rather than to develop a relationship. It wasn't always this way. People not so long ago knew a lot more about love, and
Hmm.
they knew it in a much deeper way. So perhaps one of the things I would point you to is a story we all know, which has been around for probably thousands of years, and that's the story of Cinderella. Everyone knows Cinderella, the prince comes and rescues her, and that's great.
Yeah.
Except that's the Disney version.
Is it?
It's nothing to do with the story that was collected by the Grimm brothers. It's nothing to do with that. And the story that they tell is very, very different. I mean, Cinderella is, of course, this orphan archetype who is sitting in the ashes and is oppressed by her stepmother and her wicked sisters, who aren't ugly, actually, in the original story. They're beautiful, but they have wicked hearts,
Mm.
which is kind of interesting. And she is told that she absolutely cannot go to this ball. And instead of sitting around waiting for a fairy godmother, that's the Disney version, no, no, no. What she does is she talks to the birds and the mice who she's been very kind to, and this reminds her of what she has to do. And she goes to her mother's grave. That's not in the Disney version. And there, above her mother's grave, in the tree that she planted on the grave, is a wonderful dress. So she
Ah.
puts it on, she goes to the ball, she dances till midnight, and then she runs away. And the prince does his thing. And of course, this happens 3 nights in a row. Each time the dress is more beautiful, always hanging in the tree that Cinderella planted just by her mother's grave, until the third night, she runs away, she leaves the slipper. Uh, you might say that one of the things that comes out of this is that we're being told that Cinderella is working from the core of who she is. She knows she's lovable, even though the rest of the family doesn't know that and doesn't care. She knows she deserves, and she knows she's ready, and she takes real effort to get to the ball. Now, the thing is that often when we step forward in order to accept love, we get frightened
Hmm.
and we run away. And this happens 3 times. But each time the prince is more and more interested in her. Now, when she runs away for the third time, she gives him the chance to look for her. And he looks for her 3 times. The first time he gets the first wicked sister, who cuts bits of her feet off in order to fit into the slipper. Cosmetic surgery, it's been around for a while. Uh, and he notices her feet bleeding, and in some versions of the story, he has her whipped because she's tried to deceive him. He goes back, he gets the second sister, she cuts off bits of her toes, same deal, the sister is punished. The prince doesn't give up. He says, come on, there's got to be someone else here.
Yeah.
And finally they say, well, we've got this kid over here. And she's covered in ashes and she looks horrible. She puts on the slipper and he says, this is it. Now think of that. Here is a prince, and here is this woman covered in ash, and he says, this is the one I want, because I know what it feels like when we dance together.
Uh-huh.
You know, he's prepared to put up with the scorn of everybody, his father's outrage. He's saying, this is, what a wonderful, what a strong image. Disney, where were you when this was being, talked about? No, 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 they gave us some saccharine rubbish. And that's when Cinderella rides off on the horse. You might say they've rescued each other. She came forward to meet him. He comes forward to meet her. And the story continues that the doves that had led Cinderella to the tree to collect her dress, the doves return and they find the wicked sisters and they peck their eyes out.
Oh,
Yeah. Because they had sought to deceive people by their looks, you see? So there's a
wonderful.
strong message there. Now that, I'm afraid, I'm afraid to say this about Disney because, well, I'm not afraid, I'm just so disgusted by Disney. But this was a powerful story that any kid could have read and said, oh, right, this is about love and self-awareness and standing up for what one believes in. And I've only just scraped the surface here, there's a lot more.
Yeah.
And Disney perverted it.
But
Huh.
instead of, yeah, because always we hear as singles, and I'm single myself, and people say, oh, you can't think that the Prince Charming will come. But
Uh,
really, I think a lot of singles, though, especially the ones, that I'm connecting with through YouTube, and I would include myself, that are in spiritual realm and development, then you
mhm.
realize that there's something, a true essence, which is the heart and your calling, and that it feels right, like it feels in that story. It's not so
Yes.
much about a particular look or person or X number of qualities, but it's how this heart feels. It's
Precisely, you put it beautifully. And that's why Cinderella and the prince have to dance together. It's not about her dress. Think about dancing, if you were ballroom dancing when two people hold each other close. Either you're in tune with the other person or you're not. And if you're not, you trip over their feet. Either you have that sense of harmony with them. This is an emblem, a symbol, or you're not.
yeah.
And these two do it not just once but three times, and they know that something important has happened there. And that's the real inspiration of this story.
Thank you for bringing back the magic in our life, Allan. Allan is the author of the 6 Archetypes of Love. Highly recommended. Thank you, Allan.
Thank you, Lilu. It's a pleasure.